"Sir, my mommy's crying in the bathroom." The tiny voice came from somewhere near the CEO's knees. Adrian Hale, New York's most feared, most respected, most impossibly precise CEO, froze. He had just stepped out of the elevator, surrounded by directors who were mid-sentence when the little girl tugged on the sleeve of his $1,000 suit. In her trembling hand was a soft pink backpack shaped like a unicorn. One ear bent as if it survived a long, difficult morning. Everyone stared at her. No one breathed. And Adrian, the man whose calendar was booked minute to minute for the next 8 months, slowly crouched down. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl sniffed. "Lila." "And where is your mom?" She pointed toward the hallway restroom, her small fingers shaking. "In there. She's crying a lot. She told me to wait, but I got scared." The directors exchanged panicked glances. This was not in any protocol manual. But something flickered in Adrian's expression, something almost invisible, before he stood up and handed his tablet to his assistant. "I'll handle it," he said. No one expected those 4 words. Adrian pushed open the restroom door gently. The sound of muffled sobs leaked from the corner stall. He paused, then knocked once, firm but not harsh. "Ma'am, my name is Adrian Hale." A rare softness entered his tone. "Your daughter is with me. She's safe." Silence, then a quiet gasp. The stall unlocked, and the door cracked open just enough for a woman to peek out. Her eyes were red, her lashes wet, and her face was a kind of pale exhaustion that came from carrying too much for too long. I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't think anyone would come in. I didn't know what else to do." Adrian stepped back, giving her space. "Take your time. When you're ready, your daughter is right outside." Her tears spilled again. "I shouldn't have brought her to work today. I didn't have a choice." Adrian didn't respond immediately. He wasn't used to these situations, wasn't used to emotion hanging in the air like a fragile thread. After a moment, he spoke carefully. "What's your name?" "Emma," she said. "Emma Clark. I work in accounting." He nodded once. "Come out when you're ready. I'll wait with your daughter." When he stepped back into the hallway, Lila looked up at him with wide hazel eyes. "Is Mommy okay?" "She will be," he said. "I promise." Lila surprised him by slipping her hand into his. Her fingers were tiny, warm, trusting in a way he hadn't felt in years. Something in his chest tightened. Not painfully, but sharply enough to remind him of the life he had buried beneath success, money, and loneliness. Minutes later, Emma emerged, clutching tissues, embarrassment flushing her cheeks. She reached for Lila, and the little girl ran into her arms. "I'm so sorry," Emma whispered Adrian. "I didn't mean to cause a scene. It's just been a rough few months. I didn't think anyone would notice." Adrian studied her. Her clothes were clean but worn. Her hand shook slightly, the way hands do when someone is balancing exhaustion and fear at the same time. He recognized it too well. "Ms. Clark," he said quietly. "What happened today?" Emma hesitated, looking down. Lila pressed her cheek into her mother's shoulder. "It's complicated," Emma murmured, voice cracking. "Work, bills, my ex, everything just hit me at once. And then the daycare called saying they couldn't keep Lila today because of understaffing. I didn't know where to take her. I didn't want to miss work again. I can't afford to." Her breath broke. "I thought I could get through the day. I thought I could hold it together." Adrian exhaled slowly. His directors watched from a careful distance, whispering among themselves, trying to decode the expression on their boss's face. "Come with me," he said. Emma blinked. "Yes, sir." I said, "Come with me." He turned and began walking toward his private office, an office no employee at her level had ever stepped foot inside. Emma's heart thudded with anxiety as she followed, Lila gripping her hand. When the door closed behind them, silence settled like a soft blanket. Adrian faced them, hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Clark," he said, "you're not in trouble. I want you to understand that first." Relief washed over her so intensely she nearly swayed. But before she could speak, Adrian moved toward a small cabinet and pulled out a glass pitcher of water, pouring her a cup. No one in the entire company had ever seen the CEO pour water for an employee. Sit, he said gently. Emma obeyed, her knees weak. Lila climbed into her lap. Mommy, don't cry anymore, she whispered. Adrian watched the scene, the tightness in his chest returning. Something unspoken flickered through his eyes. Something old, haunted, deeply personal. After a moment, he finally spoke. I know what it's like, he said, voice low, to have too much on your shoulders. To pretend you're okay when you're not. Emma looked up slowly. There was something raw and honest in his tone. Something she would never have imagined coming from the man known as the ICO in every business magazine. What you're going through, he continued, does not make you weak. It makes you human. Emma's throat closed. Her eyes shimmered. Adrian walked around his desk, rested his palms on the surface, and said something no one in the building or the entire industry would have ever predicted. From today onward, things will be different for you. And for your daughter. Emma blinked in confusion. Different how? He looked at Lila, at her innocence, her bravery, her tiny fingers wrapped around her mother's. Then he looked at Emma again, and the decision he made, the one he was about to speak aloud, would change both of their lives forever. Adrian took a breath and said, I'm moving you out of accounting. Emma's pulse jumped. Yes, sir. You're being transferred, he continued, to a new position, one with flexible hours, higher pay, and on-site support for your daughter, whenever you need it. Emma stared at him as if she hadn't heard correctly. Lila tilted her head, curious, hugging her unicorn backpack. I don't understand, Emma whispered. Why would you do that for me? Adrian leaned back slightly, his expression unreadable but softer than anyone in this building had ever seen. Because you're a good employee, and because no one should have to choose between their job and their child. Emma pressed her lips together, fighting another tremor of emotion. I don't deserve this, she murmured. You do, he said firmly. You've been working here for almost 3 years. Not once late, not once careless. Your manager reports you carry half the department's load without complaining. I'll only do what's expected, she said. No, he corrected. You've done more than expected, while dealing with things no one should handle alone. Emma swallowed, gripping Lila's hand. Adrian walked toward the window, the city skyline stretching like a steel garden beyond glass, and took a long breath. For a moment, the formidable seal looked almost human. Years ago, he said quietly, I knew someone who tried to juggle everything alone. Work, bills, raising a child, pretending she wasn't drowning. He hesitated. No one noticed until it was too late. Emma's heart softened, sensing a wound behind his composure. I vowed, Adrian continued, that if I was ever in a position to help someone in a similar place, I wouldn't look away. Emma didn't know what to say. Gratitude, confusion, disbelief, everything tangled in her chest. Lila, however, broke the silence first. Mommy works really hard, she told Adrian, completely sincere. She makes pancakes when she's tired, and she braids my hair even when her hands hurt. Emma's breath caught. Lila, she's the best mommy, the little girl declared, nodding firmly. A faint smile tugged at the corner of Adrian's mouth, so slight it would have gone unnoticed by anyone who didn't happen to be sitting 3 feet away. She sounds extraordinary, he said. Lila beamed. Emma felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time they weren't bored to spare. They were the kind that come from being seen, finally, after so long. Adrian returned to his desk, pulled out a sleek folder, and placed it in front of Emma. I'm assigning you as my executive project coordinator, he said. It's a role I've been planning to create for months. It requires someone sharp, organized, and trustworthy. Emma shook her head, stunned. But I've never... You'll learn, he said simply. I'll have my chief of staff train you personally. And your schedule will be flexible. If your daughter needs you, you step out. No questions asked. Emma's breath trembled. Sir, this is too much. It's exactly right, he replied. Lila tapped the desk with one finger. Does Mommy get her own office? Adrian looked down at her with unexpected warmth. Yes, she does. Lila gasped. With a window? Adrian nodded. With a window. Lila hugged her mother so tightly that Emma had to laugh. An exhausted, shaky laugh that sounded like the first bit of sunlight after a storm. But then something shifted in Emma's expression. A flicker of worry crossed her face. "Sir," she said slowly, "my manager, Mr. Hensley, he's not going to like this. He already thinks I slow the department down. He told me once that people with outside distractions shouldn't work in corporate." Adrian's jaw tightened at the name. "Did he now?" Emma paled. "I shouldn't have said anything. Please forget." "No," Adrian interrupted, calm but sharp. "I don't forget things." He walked to his desk phone. "Send Mr. Hensley to my office. Now." Emma stiffened. "Please, sir, don't cause trouble because of me." "This isn't trouble," Adrian said. "This is correction." Lila leaned toward her mother and whispered, "Is he in trouble like when I draw on the walls?" Emma hushed her gently, but Adrian answered anyway. "Worse," he said plainly. Minutes later, a knock sounded, and Mr. Hensley entered, his expression instantly twisting when he saw Emma seated comfortably in the CEO's private office. "Sir," Hensley said tightly, "I was told you needed me." Adrian didn't bother with small talk. "I understand you've been making discriminatory remarks to one of my employees." Hensley's eyes flickered. I don't know what you mean." "Let's not waste time," Adrian replied coolly. "You implied Ms. Clark is a liability because she's a single mother. You've denied her reasonable accommodations. You've overloaded her with work, and you've reprimanded her for issues caused by your own poor planning." Hensley stiffened. "Sir, with respect." "With respect," Adrian interrupted, and the room went cold. "You're fired." Hensley froze. Emma's eyes widened. "Security will escort you out," Adrian added, already turning away. Hensley sputtered. "You can't?" "I just did." 2 guards arrived almost instantly, and Hensley was swept out, muttering protests that no one paid attention to. When the door clicked shut, silence settled again. Emma exhaled shakily. "Sir, I didn't mean to." "You didn't do anything wrong," Adrian said, "and you won't apologize for speaking the truth." Lila tugged at Emma's sleeve. "Mommy, are things better now?" Emma looked at her daughter, really looked at her, and for the first time in months, she felt something lift inside her. Something heavy and invisible that she'd been carrying alone. "Yes, sweetheart," she whispered. "Things are better." Lila smiled, soft and pure. "Good. Because I don't like when you cry." Emma's throat tightened. Adrian watched them quietly, his posture relaxing in a way no one else ever witnessed. "You'll start your new position Monday," he said softly. "Until then, take the rest of the week off." Emma blinked. "The whole week?" "You need rest," Adrian replied, "and time with your daughter." He hesitated. "And if you need anything," he added, voice low, "you come to me directly." Emma met his gaze. Something unspoken passed between them. Something warm, careful, unexpected. "Thank you," she whispered. Adrian gave a single nod. But what none of them realized, not yet, was that this moment, this day, this chance encounter, was only the beginning of something that would change all 3 of their lives in ways none of them could predict. Emma left the office with Lila's tiny hand wrapped in hers, her heart trembling between disbelief and relief. The hallway outside Adrian's office felt different now, less harsh, less cold. As they walked toward the elevator, employees glanced curiously, whispering, wondering what the quiet accountant and her daughter were doing stepping out of the CEO's private suite. Emma kept her eyes forward. She didn't want to draw attention. But Lila, excited by everything, practically bounced beside her. "Mommy," she whispered loudly enough for half the floor to hear, "your new office is going to have a window." Emma flushed, shushing her gently. But for the first time in a long time, her smile came easily. Back upstairs, Adrian stood at the window of his office, watching the city hum below. He didn't usually linger after meetings. He didn't pause for reflection. But this was different. The moment with Emma and her daughter tugged at something in him that had been dormant, buried under years of ambition and solitude. His assistant, Maya, quietly stepped into the office. "Sir?" Do you want me to cancel your next meeting? Adrian didn't turn from a glass. Yes. Maya blinked. He never canceled anything. Should I reschedule? No, he said. Cancel completely. She hesitated, then nodded. Understood. When she left, the silence returned, and Adrian let his eyes slip shut for just a moment. He hadn't intended to intervene so deeply today. But something about Emma, her quiet strength, the trembling exhaustion in her eyes, the way she protected her daughter despite her own unraveling, stirred a memory that tightened his chest. A memory of someone else who had once stood in front of him with a brave smile and tired eyes. Someone he failed. He exhaled slowly and opened his eyes again. Downtown, the traffic crawled. The world moved the way it always had. Indifferent, relentless. But inside his chest, something had shifted. He didn't fully understand it yet. He only knew he didn't want Emma to fall through the cracks the way. He cut off the thought before it could finish. Meanwhile, in the elevator, Lila looked up at her mother as the doors closed. Mommy, she said softly, are we going home now? Yes, baby. The nice man said we can take the week off. Lila smiled. Are we going to make pancakes? Emma's voice cracked. Yes, sweetheart. Pancakes and anything else you want. The elevator descended, and with each floor they passed, it felt like a weight lifted a little more from Emma's shoulders. When the lobby doors opened, she stepped out into the cool afternoon air and let it wash over her like a promise she didn't yet trust but desperately wanted to believe in. She pulled her daughter close. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she whispered as if convincing herself, everything is going to be okay. The rest of the week passed slowly. Emma tried to rest. She tried to relax. She took Lila to the park, watched her run across the grass with her hair flying behind her, listened to her giggles echo like little bells. But at night, when the apartment went quiet, Emma would sit on the worn couch with her hands wrapped around a mug of tea that grew cold in her fingers. Her mind raced. Why had Adrian Hale been so kind to her? He didn't have a reputation for kindness. He wasn't known for softness. He was calculated, exacting, brilliant, and distant. The type of man who could cut through a boardroom with one look. So why her? Why now? She replayed the moment Lila tugged on his sleeve, the way he crouched, the gentleness in his voice, the way he defended her, protected her, even when he didn't have to. And then his confession, quiet, almost vulnerable. Years ago, I knew someone who was drowning, someone he couldn't save. Emma closed her eyes. Whoever that person was, she knew the memory haunted him, and she couldn't shake the feeling that Adrian hadn't just stepped in to help her. He'd stepped in because something about her pain echoed something from his past. On Friday morning, while Emma was flipping pancakes, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something nudged her thumb forward. Hello? Ms. Clark? This is Adrian. Her breath caught. She steadied her voice. Mr. Hale, good morning. Am I interrupting? Emma glanced at the half-cooked pancake on the pan. No, not at all. I want to check on you and your daughter, he said. How are you both doing? The question stunned her, not the words themselves, but the sincerity beneath them. We're okay, she said softly. Better, actually. Thank you. I'm glad, he replied, and she could hear the relief despite how subtly he tried to hide it. Sir, she added hesitantly. Yes. Why did you do all this for me? Silence stretched for a moment. She wondered if she had overstepped. But then Adrian's quiet voice came through the speaker. Because no one did it for someone who mattered to me. Emma's breath hitched. Ms. Clark, he continued, tone steady but gentler than before. You don't owe me anything for the help I've given, but you do owe yourself rest. And a fresh start. Monday begins a new chapter for you. Emma blinked away sudden tears. I don't know how to thank you. You already did, he said. How? That day in my office, he hesitated. You didn't look at me the way everyone else does. She froze. You didn't fear me, he said quietly. You didn't worship me. You didn't see the CEO. You saw a person. Emma gently leaned against the counter, heart racing. Because you were one, she whispered. He didn't respond, but the silence fell full, like something fragile and forming. "I'll see you Monday," he finally said. "Yes," she breathed. "Monday." When the call ended, Emma stood still for a long moment. Lila tugged her shirt. "Mommy?" "Pancakes." Emma wiped her eyes quickly and forced a small smile. "Yes, baby, pancakes." But inside, everything felt different now. Monday morning came like a breath of new air. Emma entered the building in a crisp blouse, her hair neatly pulled back, her heart pounding. She tried not to let the nerves overwhelm her, but this was no ordinary day. Everything about her life had shifted. She reached the elevator and froze. Adrian was already inside. The doors were closing. He lifted his gaze just in time to see her and subtly placed his hand between the doors, stopping them. They reopened. Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them. "Good morning, Miss Clark," he said. "Good morning, Adrian." He blinked. Surprised she'd said his first name, but he didn't correct her. In fact, something softened in him. "Shall we?" he asked. Emma stepped inside, her pulse loud in her ears, and as the doors closed, the elevator began to rise, along with something neither of them fully understood yet. The elevator rose smoothly, humming softly as the numbers climbed. Emma stood on one side, hands clasped together to keep them from trembling. Adrian stood on the opposite side, polished, composed, unreadable, but there was a quiet tension in the air that neither tried to break. It wasn't uncomfortable, just new, unexpected. After a moment, Adrian spoke first. "Your daughter, she got to school safely this morning?" Emma nodded. "Yes." She couldn't stop talking about how Mommy has a big girl office now. A small, fleeting smile crossed his features. "She seems very proud of you." Emma's lips softened. "She's the reason I get through the days I think I can't." Adrian inhaled deeply, as if he understood more than he let on. Before he could respond, the elevator chimed and opened onto the top floor, the executive level. The air itself felt different here, quieter, more expensive, as though the carpet absorbed the sound of footsteps. Employees glanced up when they saw Emma walk beside the CEO. Their eyes widened, curious, confused, whispering behind hands and screens. Emma felt the heat rise in her cheeks. "Don't mind them," Adrian murmured, noticing instantly. "They talk about anything that disrupts routine. Walking next to you definitely does that," she said before she could stop herself. Adrian halted. Emma froze, realizing what she'd said. I didn't mean..." But to her shock, Adrian laughed under his breath. A soft, low sound, one she wasn't sure many people had ever heard. "It's all right," he said. "I suppose you're right." They continued walking, and when they reached a corner office she had never stepped near before, Adrian stopped. "This," he said, opening the door for her, "is yours." Emma stepped inside and gasped softly. The room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, a sleek desk, fresh flowers, a comfortable couch, organization baskets and shelves already arranged. Everything clean, bright, and unexpectedly warm. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "You deserve a place where you can breathe," Adrian said quietly behind her. Emma turned slowly. "You didn't have to do any of this." "No," he agreed, "but I wanted to." Their eyes held for a moment she couldn't define. Something gentle. Something dangerous. Something that felt like crossing a line even though neither moved an inch. A knock on the door broke the moment. Adrian's chief of staff, Amelia, stepped in with a folder. "Miss Clark, I'll be training you today." Adrian nodded once, his tone shifting back into a CEO cadence. "She'll familiarize you with the workflow. If you need anything at all, my office is across the hall." Emma's pulse kicked. "Across the hall?" Adrian held her gaze as he said, "Yes." Then he left, and the door closed behind him. But the warmth in the room didn't fade. The morning passed in a blur of note-taking, shadowing, and learning the rhythm of position she never imagined herself in. Amelia was patient, kind, surprisingly welcoming. "He thinks highly of you," Amelia said at one point while showing Emma how the internal systems worked. Emma nearly dropped her pen. "W what?" "No," He barely knows me. That doesn't matter, Amelia replied. He trusts his instincts, and he wouldn't bring someone up here unless he believed in them. Emma felt her stomach twist. I just don't want anyone to think I'm here because he feels sorry for me. Sorrow had nothing to do with it, Amelia said. I've worked with Mr. Hale for 6 years. I've seen him make decisions that seem cold but were actually painfully calculated for the greater good. And I've seen him extend a hand when someone truly needed it. She paused. But he's never personally handled a situation the way he handled yours. Emma didn't know what to do with that truth. Around noon, Amelia excused herself to prepare for an executive briefing. Take a break, Miss Clark. You've earned it. Emma nodded, her mind swirling. When she stepped out into the hallway, she didn't expect to see Adrian leaning against the wall, scrolling through his tablet. But he looked up as though he had been waiting. How's the first day? He asked. Good, she said, surprised at how easy the word came. Better than good, actually. I'm glad. There was a pause, soft, not awkward. Have you eaten? He asked. Emma blinked. Not yet. Come with me, Adrian said. It wasn't a request, but it wasn't a command either. More like an invitation. He led her down the hall to a private dining room she hadn't known existed. Quiet, sunlit, overlooking the water. A server entered, saw Adrian, and nodded with practiced familiarity. He set out 2 menus, but Adrian waved them away gently. The usual, he said, for 2. Emma sat slowly. She had never shared a table with a CEO before. Certainly not the CEO. And definitely not one who looked at her like she was more than a passing concern. You don't have to do this, she said softly. I don't want to take up your time. You're not, he replied. I wanted to have lunch with you. Her heart thudded. Why? She asked, before she could stop the question from slipping out. He answered without hesitation. Because I want to know you beyond the tears in the bathroom. Emma's chest tightened. And, he added quietly, because my instincts tell me you're someone worth understanding. She swallowed hard. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. They ate in a gentle quiet, but not an uncomfortable one. Every now and then their fingers brushed when both reached for the water at the same time. Every now and then he glanced at her a fraction of a second too long. Every now and then her pulse raced for reasons she didn't want to examine too closely. When lunch ended, Adrian walked her back to her office. Emma stopped at the door. Thank you, she said softly. For lunch. For everything. Adrian shifted slightly, his expression gentling in a way she had never seen him soften with anyone else. You're welcome, Emma. Hearing her first name from his lips startled her. Warm, careful, deliberate. He turned to leave, then paused. Would you join me this afternoon? He asked. There's a strategy meeting I want you to observe. She blinked. You want me there? Yes, he said. I want you close to the work you'll be handling. Close. The word lingered long after he walked away. Hours later, the strategy meeting began. The boardroom was massive. Glass walls, leather chairs, a marble table. Executives filled the room, murmuring updates, flipping through slides. Adrian entered last. Everyone stood instinctively, but his gaze went straight to Emma. He walked past dozens of his highest-ranking officers and stopped beside her chair. You ready? He asked softly. Her pulse fluttered. Yes. He gave the slightest nod, one that somehow made her feel grounded, capable, seen. As the presentation began, Emma watched him command the room with calm authority. But every so often, she felt his eyes return to her, as if checking she was following, as if she mattered, as if she belonged there. And somewhere between a revenue projection and a market analysis, she realized her life had changed, not by accident, not by luck, but because a man who never let anyone close had chosen to open a door for her. And maybe, just maybe, something deeper was forming behind that door. Something neither of them fully understood yet. The winter sun dipped low behind the skyline when the final meeting of the quarter ended and the boardroom slowly emptied. Executives shuffled out with stiff smiles and stiff suits, murmuring their final thoughts. But Emma remained seated, her notebook resting lightly in her lap. Her mind wasn't on the projections or the slides or the polished speeches. They had faded the moment Adrian turned off the screen, and everyone began filing out. It felt different now. Quiet, almost intimate. Adrian stood at the head of the table, hands braced against the polished surface, shoulders rising and falling with a slow breath he didn't bother hiding. Only when the last door closed behind the last director did he look up, and the exhaustion in his eyes was softened by something else. Something he didn't show to anyone but her. "You handled yourself well today," he said, his voice low, lingering in the stillness. Emma rose slowly. "I didn't do much." "You listened," he replied. "Most people don't. They wait to talk. You watched the room. You understood the decisions before they were explained. That's not nothing." Her heart warmed at the sincerity in his tone. "I'm still learning." "Good," he said. "I need people around me who are willing to learn, not pretend they already know everything." He stepped closer, not too close, but close enough for her to feel the shift in the air. Close enough for the dim lights to catch the faint tiredness beneath his otherwise controlled expression. "Come with me," he said softly. Something in his voice, gentle, deliberate, made her follow without question. He led her to the company terrace, a place few had access to. The view was breathtaking. City lights glittering like 1,000 fireflies, the river shimmering gold beneath the fading sky. The breeze was cold enough to make her wrap her arms around herself. Without a word, Adrian removed his coat and draped it over her shoulders. Emma's breath hitched. "Adrian, you don't have to." "I know," he said, "but I want to." She pulled the coat a little tighter, the warmth of it settling around her like a reassurance she wasn't used to. For a few moments, they stood in silence, watching the world move far below them. Horns blaring, lights flickering, life pulsing endlessly. "You asked me once," Adrian said quietly, keeping his gaze on the skyline, "why I helped you." Emma turned to him, her eyes soft. "Yes." And now, she could feel he was ready to give the real answer. "When I was a boy," he began, "my mother worked 3 jobs. She barely slept, barely ate. She tried so hard to protect me from everything she carried, but I always knew." He swallowed. "I watched her break a little more every year. And one day, she didn't break anymore. She shattered." Emma's heart tightened painfully. "No one stepped in for her," Adrian said. "No one cared. People saw her struggle and walked past it because it wasn't their problem." His jaw clenched softly. "I made a promise to myself that if I ever had the power to change that for someone else, I would." She could hear the truth in his voice. The ache. The memory. "When I saw you in that hallway with your daughter," he said, turning toward her now, "I saw my mother. Not in who you are. She carried different battles. But in the way you stood there trying so hard to be strong when everything around you was collapsing. And I couldn't walk away from that. Not again." Emma didn't realize tears had filled her eyes until one slipped down her cheek. She brushed it away quickly, embarrassed, but Adrian stepped closer, just close enough for his hand to reach her face if he chose to. He didn't touch her, but the intent was there, warm and steady. "You didn't have to save me," she whispered. "I didn't," he agreed softly. "You were already saving yourself. I only moved a few obstacles out of your way." She let out a shaky laugh, blinking back the rest of her tears. "You make it sound so easy. For you," his voice lowered, "I would have moved mountains." Emma's heart trembled at the weight of that confession. Not in a romantic explosion, not yet, but in a quiet, undeniable shift. A turning point. A hinge the future could swing open from. "Adrian," she breathed. He looked at her fully now. No walls, no armor, no title masking the man underneath. "You don't owe me anything, Emma. Not gratitude. Not loyalty. Not anything else you think I might be hoping for." His eyes softened. "The only thing I want is for you to feel safe. Supported. Seen." Emma felt her entire chest open in a way she hadn't let happen in years. "You've given me more than that," she whispered. "You gave me a chance to stand again." Adrian exhaled, slow, quiet, relieved. "Then that's enough." She stepped closer, drawn by a pull she didn't try to resist. The breeze brushed her hair across her face, and without thinking, Adrian reached out gently to tuck it behind her ear. His fingers lingered for a heartbeat, then a breath, then a moment longer than either of them expected. "Emma," he murmured, her name falling to his lips like a promise. She didn't step away. Neither did he. The world below kept spinning. The lights kept glowing. The river kept flowing. But up there, on that quiet terrace, time seemed to still between them, not in a dramatic rush, not in a fairy tale sweep, but in a quiet, powerful truth. Two people who had been drowning in different ways had found a place where they could breathe again. Together, Adrian let his hand fall gently from her cheek, but didn't step back. His voice was barely above a whisper now. "This isn't the end," he said. "It's the beginning." Emma nodded, her eyes shining with certainty she didn't have before. "Then let it begin." They stood side by side, overlooking a city that suddenly felt smaller, softer, less lonely, because something new had taken root between them. Something fragile but real. Something worth fighting for. And neither of them intended to let go of it.